This limud will, be'ezer Hashem, be a direct continuation of the basic yesodos established in last week's limud. So just to recap briefly the points which we were able to establish in last week's limud, based on Makairis in the Rishonim and a reading of the Rambam in Perek Vav, HSukkah, particularly Halacha Hey and Halacha Vav. What emerged was that there are two parts to the mitzvah of Yeshiva Sukkah. One is to establish a sukkah where that sukkah will be one's diras kivah for Shiva Yomim. And we finished the limud with the words of the Rogatchover and Tzofnas Paneach that the establishment of the sukkah as one's diras kivah is accomplished through a ma'isa achila in the sukkah. And in addition to that, once that sukkah has been established as a diras kivah, or as we'll see Be'ez Hashem in this limud, even an instance where a diras kivah has not been established, there are then maisim which cannot be done outside the sukkah because those are under contradiction and undermine dira in the sukkah. And hence the Rambam's Isser Achila Chutz LaSukkah and the Isser of Sheina Chutz LaSukkah. And we saw two nafkiminas ladina, and with that we ended the limud. The first was what Reb Chaim in Sefer establishes in the Rambam, that the din that Shem Shomayim is Chalal HaSukkah, the part of the sukkah which becomes Kodosh as a result of Shem Shomayim Chalal HaSukkah is not just the schach, which is the technical definition of the sukkah, but includes the tfanos, because it's with both tfanos and schach that one's Mekai in the midst of Yeshiva Sukkah. And therefore we see that the mitzvah of Yeshiva Sukkah is what defines what the object of the Sukkah is. And second, we saw very briefly at the end of the limud that Shem Shomayim is not Chalal HaSukkah by mere hazmona, just by saying this should be the Sukkah. It requires a ma'aseh of Yeshiva in the Sukkah. And it's that ma'aseh Yeshiva in the Sukkah that the Bir Halacha says establishes Shem Shomayim Chalal HaSukkah at any point that that's done during Sukkahs. Again, seeing that it's the ma'aseh Yeshiva which gives the Sukkah its Kedusha and its Shem Sukkah. This limud will continue with, based on that Yesod, where we will see that the Yesod of that the ma'aseh Achila establishes the Sukkah as the Makam Kavua will be defined as the initial ma'aseh Achila that one does in the Sukkah Laila Rishayim. And this limud be'ezer Hashem will attempt to show this both from the Gedolei HaRishonim and from the Gedolei HaPoskim.
So the Rosh was invited to the pool. If somebody sleeps in the sukkah, he will not take the sukkah. It's invited to the pool.
So that we'll come to define more exactly what the Gedarim of what establishes the Sukkah. The Pashtus is correct. It's the ma'aseh Achila, but we'll see be'ezer Hashem. We'll begin with the ma'aseh Rav. The ma'aseh Rav in the first piece of ma'aseh Rav, letter Reish Yud Zayin in Hilchos Sukkah, establishes the following din. Laila Harishon Shal Sukkos. On the first night of Sukkos, Choyva Lecha Basukkah. There is a chiyuv to eat in the Sukkah. Kimoy Laila Rishona Shal Pesach. In the same way as there's a chiyuv to eat a kezayis matzah b'Leil Pesach, there's a chiyuv to eat in the Sukkah Leil Rishon. As I state in Ma'aseh Rav. Memela, the Goin then continues, and he says, "V'nafkemina." As a result of this din that one's mechuyev tita kezayis laila rishayno, din that we're familiar with, im yordim gishomim, if it's raining, tzorich lahamtin besudasoi ad shas hakoisher lechel basuda. You cannot begin eating until you can eat in the sukkah. Then the Goin says, "V'osa lishon kol halayla," and you can't go to sleep either. Shemo yia eis ru'uya la'achila, because perhaps the rain will stop, and then you become mechuyev to eat in the sukkah. The Goin then says, "Aval b'sukkah lo yoichal," you cannot eat in the sukkah. Afilu b'layla harishayna, even the first night, be'eis shah geshomim yardim, while it's raining. the oz ein shem sukkah olav. Because while there is geshomim, the sukkah doesn't have the din of a sukkah. So we'll explain the makar, try and explain the makar of this gra, the kasha that there is associated with this gra, and then try and establish based on Rishonim Hezber in the gra, and we'll try and come to the yesod of this shir bli neder. Now, let's briefly summarize a sugya that is familiar, the basic three shittas Rishonim regarding the mitzvah of achila in sukkah laila rishona. The Rishonim ask a very basic kasha. The Gemara in Brachas on Daf Mem Tesam and Beis establishes that on Yom Tif one is mechuyev to eat pas. On Yom Tif there's a chiyuv mitzad simchas Yom Tif. The Rishonim say some Rishonim is a lashon of oineg Yom Tif, but there's a chiyuv on Yom Tif to eat pas. Therefore, the Gemara says, since the din is that boi ochil, one has to eat pas, so therefore, if one forgets Ya'alav V'yavai on Yom Tif, one has to be mevarach birchas hamazon again, because there's a chiyuv to eat pas. Whereas on Rosh Chodesh, there isn't a chiyuv to eat pas, and therefore, if one leaves out Ya'alav V'yavai in birchas hamazon, one does not have to be chayzer. So Tosfos Afanart asks a kasha, and Tosfos says that the Gemara in Sukkah Daf Chav Zayin establishes that besides for the Laila Rishona of Sukkahs, the rest of Sukkahs, I boy ochel, I boy loy ochel. One doesn't have to eat in the Sukkah except Laila Rishona. So Tosfos says the two Gemaras are a steer. The Gemara in Brachas says that mitzad simchas ha'oineg Yom Tif, you have to eat a kazayis pas. And if you would have to eat a kazayis pas on Sukkahs, avada you'd have to eat it in the Sukkah. So how could the Gemara in Sukkah say that the rest of the Yomim of Yom Tif, if you want to sit in the Sukkah, it's a Rishus, Shitas Chachamim, which is how we pass him. Harei you mechuyev to eat pas mitzad simchas Yom Tif. This is the kasha that the Rishonim ask. On the one hand, we have a Gemara in Brachas that establishes that one is mechuyev to eat pas mitzad din Yom Tif. Zok Tosfos, if that would be true, then one would be mechuyev to eat that pas in the Sukkah, in which case it's going to come out that one's mukhrach to eat pas in the sukkah. So what does the Gemara in Sukkah mean when it says, so to answer this shaila, we have three basic shittas rishonim that the Gra summarizes for us in Bira Gra and Simon Tafresh Lamites.
Can you put up the Bira Gra, please?
The first shita is if you want to see it, it's in the Maramakomis booklet.
Yeah, let's get it on the page. It is Chaf page, right? So it's page 54. No, 56. 56. Page 56. Okay, we have the bigger on the screen.
So we'll summarize briefly the Teichen Hadvarim in the Gra. The first shita is the shita of Tosfos. Afanart and Brachas, Tosfos brings B'Shem Rabbeinu Yehuda, that the nafkimina between being mechuyev to eat mitzad Yom Tif and being mechuyev to eat mitzad Sukkah is what would be in the zman of Yeridas Geshomim, if it would be raining. So Zok Tosfos, mitzad choyvas Sukkah, one is potter to eat in the Sukkah when it's Yardim Geshomim. Zok Tosfos, that's all on the rest of the Yomim. But on Laila Rishona, one is mechuyev to eat in the Sukkah. So Zok Tosfos like this. Eino chenami. If the mechayev would be simchas Yom Tif, then that simchas Yom Tif you'd be able to be mekayim by eating pas outside the Sukkah. Because while Geshomim are being yored, there's no mechayev of eating in the Sukkah. Zok Tosfos, the nafkamina will be that if after eating that pas mitzad simchas Yom Tif, then the Geshomim would end, then one would be mechuyev to go eat in the Sukkah again on the first night. So it means like this. When the Gemara says in Sukkah, I boy ochel, I boy loy ochel, what it means is if Geshomim are yored, you eat outside the Sukkah. If Geshomim aren't being yored, then the reason why you have to eat in the Sukkah is because Simchas Yom Tov is making you eat pas. Laila Rishona that you have to eat in the sukkah means even if you already ate pas chutz la sukkah, you have to eat in the sukkah again. Riyatas Lashon HaTeisus is that when it's Yered Geshomim B'Laila Rishona and you want to eat pas, in order to be Mekayim Mitzvah Simchas Yontiv, Avad, you can eat the pas outside the sukkah. Right now, the potter from Mitzvah Yeshiva Sukkah. If later the Geshomim end, you then have to eat in the sukkah an additional Achilas pas in order to be Mekayim the Chayva Sukkah B'Laila Rishona. But Lu Yitzuya, the next day it's Yered Geshomim, and you ate your Suda outside the sukkah, Kadin, and then it stops raining, you're not mechuyev to go back in the sukkah. That's the rishus. That's Shitas HaTeisus. The second Shita is the Shita of the Rosh. That the Rosh is mechadish, that while it's Yered Geshomim on Laila Rishona, you're mechuyev to eat in the sukkah. There's no ptur mitztayer on the achayvas achila of Laila Rishona. And Be'ezer Hashem, in a further limud, will be oimed on the hezber of the Rosh. Right now, the hezber in the Rosh is not directly shayach to Sugi. So we have now a basic machloikes, Taisus and the Rosh. When it comes to Laila Rishon of Sukkahs, Lefi the Rosh, the mitzvah is to go directly into the Sukkah and eat despite the Geshomim. According to Taisus, eating in the Sukkah while Geshomim are being yered is not a mitzvah b'chlal. Eat the Suda outside the Sukkah, and if it stops raining, go back in and be oichel pas. So according to the Rosh, Laila Rishona that we're mechuyev to eat means we're mechuyev to eat in Geshomim. The rest of Sukkahs, if Geshomim are yered, you'll potter. The third Shita is the Shita of the Rashba. Rashba, the Smag, and other Rishonim that the Beis Yosef brings, that the difference between the Sugya in Barachas of Simchas Yontiv and the Sugya in Sukkah that says Yiboy Ochel Yiboy Lochel has nothing to do with Geshomim. La'olam, according to the Rashba, you're not mechuyev to go back in the Sukkah and eat Laila Rishona if you ate already outside. And you're certainly not mechuyev to eat in the Sukkah, but you eat that's Geshomim. The difference is that Simchas Yontiv, you're yotze with a kezayis. Shir Achila. But Sukkah, the only shir that is mechayev Sukkah is an Achilas Kva, which is a Kebetza. So Memela is what the Rashba on the Smag, there's no mastir between the sugyas.
Gzer Shava, you want Gzer Shava, you want to know. What about Gzer Shava?
The Gzer Shava? Yeah, so we'll get to that in just a second. Memela is what the Rashba, the etzem steer between the sugyas is not a steer b'chlal. Because when the Gemara says in brachas that you have to eat past, that means a kizayis. But the chiv to eat basukah is only going to be with a kabeh, which you're not mechuyev to at Simchas Yontiv. Zot the Rashba, the only exception is that Laila Rishona you have to eat a kizayis basukah because of the hekesh tomato. But the actual stiras hasugyas is not the stira b'chla. So to summarize, we have three shitas. What the difference between Laila Rishona and the rest of sukkahs is b'negei tiboy ochel iboy lo yochel. Even though the Gemara says in Sukkah that one has to eat Pasal Simchas Yontiv. Tosfos says that Laila Rishona you have to eat in the Sukkah again when the Geshomim end, even though you already were Mekayim Simchas Yontiv previously. According to the Rosh, you have to eat in the Suda, eat Kazayas Pasal in the Sukkah, even while Geshomim are being Yered. And according to the Rashba, there's no stira between the Sugyas because one's Mechuyev to eat a Kazayas at Simchas Yontiv, but only a Kebetz is Mechayev Sukkah. Laila Rishona you have to eat a Kazayas Pasukah. Those are the three sheets.
So the Raj, even if it rains?
No, with the Raj, we have no makar to say like the Raj. Correct. The Kazayis is to be Mekayim without Chayvas Dira. But where I'm potter from Dira because it's Yardu Geshomim, then I have no Chiv to eat in the Sukkah. The Hekesh of Tezvav says that I have a Chiv to be Dor in the Sukkah Ba'ifan Achila. And we'll come to that. We'll learn this Sugi Be'ez Hashem, Ba'irech and B'linei de Bi'un, to understand the basis and swar of each one's Shijim. But what's Negeatas is the following. In Bir Hagra, the groin is machriya like Taisus. That while Geshomim are being yored, there is nothing to do in the sukkah. And the groin in HaRav is adding. What's the svara for that? Why does Taisus hold there's no chiyuv to eat in the sukkah while Geshomim are being yored? Zok the HaRav, the reason is because the oz ein shem sukkah olav. Very straight in HaRav. But the hachra of the HaRav is like Taisus. Now, let's now make a cheshbon for a moment. Lefi shitas HaTosfos. At the Tchilas Halayla, Geshomim, it's raining. Is there any reason why I shouldn't be able to eat as much pas as I want right now, chutz la sukkah, And then I'll wait that in case the Gishamim end, I'll eat a kezayis to HSukkah. Is there any reason why I shouldn't be able to do that? Or not? HaRav the going while Gishamim are being yoyred, ain't shem sukkah olav. There's nothing to be mechayev me to eat in the sukkah. So I'll eat as much as I want outside the sukkah because I'm not mechuyev to be oicha b'sukkah now. And when the chshiyif sukkah Gishamim, I'll eat a kezayis. That's what would emerge lefishit sataisis. Was steht in HaRav? What does the HaRav say? The HaRav says that in the case of where it's Yordu Gishamim, what do I have to do? Zot the HaRav, what's the din? Tzorich lahamtin b'sudosai. Hold off from achila until when? Ad shas hakoisher lechol basukah. Why should I have to do that? Why would I need to do that? Bishloimo that I shouldn't sleep because maybe the Gishamim will end. That perhaps we can understand l'shitas hatesis. Why? Because I have a mitzvah deraisa, possibly that I'm mechuyev to wait to be mekayim. So I shouldn't be yoshin and wait until I can be mekayim that mitzvah deraisa. We can be mefalpel in that. The sharatzion, just to mention derech hagav, the sharatzion in Tofresh Lametes we've got 9 is very niskasha. Why I shouldn't be able to be yoshin until the Zman HaMitzvah comes. But we can understand the basis. We can understand the basis of what the Goin is saying. So too we can understand what the Goin says at the end based on Taisus, that lo yoichal afilu b'layla rishona be'esha gishamim yoredim. There's nothing to eat in the sukkah, no point in eating in the sukkah while it's raining. But the first part of the Goin that I can't eat until the gishamim stop is not moving. Where should that come from? Why should it be that way? Harei l'shitas haTaisus, what's stopping me going into the sukkah? Because there's no sukkah now. Zot the going. Ain't shem sukkah olav. If there's ain't shem sukkah olav, I'm potter. So I can be eichel chutz sukkah until the Zman HaMitzvah arrives. Elomai, the goyin is choishish to the other shittas rishonim. So let's make a cheshbon. What would be lefi shittas harosh? What would I have to do lefi shittas harosh? I would go into the sukkah right away, eat a kezayis even though it's raining, and then eat the rest of the suda outside. So again, why do I have to wait? And according to the Rashba, b'chlal, it's not clear that I have to eat, like you said, even in the Gishamim. So if, let's say to be Yotzei Yidei Shitza Rashba, I'll eat a shir kibetza in the sukkah. What's the mechayiv to have to be mountain in the suda until the shah that's roy to be mekayim the mitzvah? The goyin is tamua. There's a sefer called Piskei Hagra, where that sefer, agav, it's kedai to mention the Dover Pele about the mechaber of the sefer Piskei Hagra. The sefer Piskei Hagra is a sefer that goes through all of Bir Hagra and Daled Chelkei Shulchan Aruch and extracts the hachrois of the Gra Ladina, which are very often not like the Shulchan Aruch. The lashon of the Chazon Ish is igros mekoymos shehagra cholek al mechaber heim lemeos. Lashon of the Chazon Ish. Hundreds of places the Chazon Ish says the Gra argues with the hachra of the mechaber. So there's a sefer called Piskei Hagra where this mechaber went through all the Bir Hagra and recorded the psakim of the Gra different to the mechaber. At one point, we take Roiv Iyun, his eyes became diseased, and he was at risk of losing his eyesight. So he went to the kever of the Gra, and he bet tzachos, and he said in the schus of being omel in the Torah, the Gra that should be merapeh ma'inayim, and he was koloi hoy. And he spent the rest of his life continuing being omel in the Torah Sagra. Ishpele. So the mechaber of the Piskei Hagra has some gilyonis, he has some notes on the Masei Rav. Called Chidushay Maritz, that printed in some of the editions of the Masei Rav, and he asks this kasha on the mechaber of the Sefer Masei Rav. He says, Ad Kedei Kach, that the mechaber of the Sefer Masei Rav misunderstood the hira of the Gra. He says, it can't be the Goyin said this. Because the Goyin in the beer paskins like Taisvis. And according to Taisvis, Kol Zman Geshamim Yeredam no chiv to eat in the sukkah. So I'll eat now, and then if the Geshamim end, I'll eat then. He says, towards the end of the second column, he says, end of the first column, I apologize. He says, Hanafkimina according to Taisvis, Ben Laila Rishoyina, the Laila Rishoyina, Be'es Achila Yordu Geshamim Ba'ochal Be'beisai. If he fulfilled Simchas Yom Tov in his house, ve'achakach ba'oisei la'ala posku yishon mechuyev lechal oida pam kezayis b'sukkah. U'b'shayim e'achag eino kain. Once you had your sukkah, you're not mechuyev to go back in the sukkah again. In fact, in the middle of the Suda, you don't even have to go back. That it should be also to eat. You should have to wait. It doesn't say that anywhere in Tosfos. No Pesach says this. You should have to hold back from eating. So eat there. Says you'll be ma'ayin, you'll see there's no makar for what the Master HaRav saying.
He says Yamtin.
What is he not being yotze by eating right away? Right now he's potter. When he becomes mechuyev, he'll be
not only potter, there's no sukkah there.
Yeah, there's even no sukkah there. What? Sorry?
How? You have no sukkah.
I am going to try to be mekayim it. I am. As soon as it stops raining, I'll go in. What am I not being mekayim? And therefore what? What did I lose? What was I mevakel? Achila gasa, you're right. So I'll make a cheshbon. I'll keep. I'll make sure it won't be achila gasa, because achila gasa I won't be mekayim. It's achila so possibly. What's the mekayim? What's in the shame with them? What's wrong with it? I'm sorry. Right now they're going saying Ad Kedei Kach is Ein Shem Sukkah love. I'm potter, onus, potter. I don't even have a chiyuv. So why should I not be oichel now? And I'll be oichel. This is the kushiyat tumah of the Maratz. He says if you're me'ayin in Tosfos, there is no makar, not just in Tosfos, but in any shittas rishonim to this din. Shtar zazach. Now, lemaisa, we do find the Chai Adam that the Mishnah Berurah brings the halacha. That the Chai Adam speaks also about waiting for the Suda. Shtei shois, the Mishnah Berurah says, till chatzois. Where does that come from? Where taka does that come from? So if one looks in the Chai Adam carefully, and this is really belongs to a sugya which Miz Hashem will learn, but just to mention the chilek that's negeret us right now. He says like this. He says we have a technical problem. If you eat the Suda in the house, you're going to have to make Kiddush. Kiddush has Shechionu in it. So now we have an asek that the Shechionu on the first night of Sukkot has to go on two things. The Zman, Yontif, and on the mitzvah of Yeshiva Sukkah. Because every new mitzvah that's Bo Mizman Zman has a Shechionu, like you're going to make Shechionu the next day on Lulav. So Zod the Chai Adam, now we're going to have a problem. If you make Shechionu by Kiddush in your house, you made Shechionu on the Yom. Now that you're going to go into the sukkah, you're going to have to make shechionu again on that achila because of the mitzvah. To make shechionu twice, we don't want to have. Because the ikar oifen that Chazal Mesakin, shechionu b'layla rishono, is in Kiddush on both. Memela zot the Chai Adam, and it's clear in the Lashon of the Chai Adam like that. Really, me'ikar adin, there's no reason why you can't start the Suda right away. Just to wait is muvchar, he says. Derech ze muvchar. This came out, I think, is
the whole night. You have to make shechionu in the morning anyway. So raise the whole night.
Correct. You're right. But if we have a chance to avoid the shaila, let's wait to avoid the shaila. So therefore, actually, I think I misquoted the Lashon Chai Adam. Lashon Chai Adam is Yoisen Nochain, not Muvchar. I'm sorry. The Lashon Chai Adam is Yoisen Nochain. It'll be better to do that. But the Chai Adam is clear that Me'ikar Adin, there's no reason why you can't start your Suda right away. And that's where the Mishnah Berurah says that if the Bnei Bayis are hungry, there's no reason to be machmir. If it's Haniyim, there's an issue of Bal Ta'acher. Perhaps Mishum Simchas Yontiv, you shouldn't wait more than Shtei Shois. Where do all these shiurim come from? Because it's only Yoisen Nochain. It's to be able to avoid a shaila. So then becomes a shikol how much we're going to wait in order to be able to be Mekayim, this derech that's Yoisen Nochain. But Me'ikar Adin mitzad Choivas Yeshiva Sukkah, no shaila. Azay is mavur in the Chai Adam.
This Chakira didn't make change the mitzvah of Sukkah, it's a new chiyuv.
Correct. But according to what will we do that monoshach? Lefishit Sarosh that it's a new chiyuv, then you'll do it based b'shas b'shamim. And the shita that it's just a gilu in yeshiva, you'll potter from yeshiva right now.
Right.
So why should I wait?
Because let's say matzah, you don't have matzah, getting matzah now, you're not supposed to eat for a mitzvah.
That's the Isra of Achila Koden La Mitzvah.
Yeah.
So that first of all, you're right. You could say that, but that's a tremendous doichak in the Gra. Secondly, here it will be mutter because Mishum Simchas Yom Tov I could do it. I have a mitzvah to be oichel right now. Right? And other Abba Lefido Shittas Rishain that Simchas Yom Tov is a deraisa Bisman Hazeh, it's a deraisa. And according to those that's a derabanan, it's possible that deraisa before derabanan before a deraisa I could also do. The whole Isser of Achila is an Achila Shal Rishus. If I want to be Mekayim, and if you want an Eitzah, so I'll be Maimed Shaimer. The Eitzah's for that.
You were saying before, this muscle was saying, this man doesn't write it.
Correct, and there's no. So what he's suggesting is that maybe to be Eitzah since eventually this man will come, I shouldn't be oichel before this man a mitzvah, like lo yimalo adam kreisa. And there is a din that erev sukkos one should be oichel the kizayis l'teyovim. So he's saying out the teyovim I shouldn't do it, right? But l'maisa mishum simchas yom tov again haraya that I could be memala b'teikais nochrim at the beginning of the suda b'vachi oichel kizayis matzah b'achrona, right? Because that's part of the seder alayla. The shachar should be worse. Even by matzah itself, we see that you can. So this is the pella on the going. Pliat suma, and from his ma'ayin in the Mishnah Berurah Ledina, both from the Chayyadam and the Bikuri Yaakov, this is the Mishnah Berurah's reason why we're mamtin. The reason why we're mamtin is because of a shechiyonim cheshbon. Oh, so that the Mishnah Berurah says that b'di eved, if you made the bracha in the bayis, you're not going to make it again by the sukkah. Because in that he's mitzadeh that b'di eved legar mishasasiyah b'lechatchila we want to avoid that because that svara is not bar. That's all. It's all michal in the Mishnah Berurah in Tafresh Lametes in Tafresh Lametes in Sifkaton. Mishnah Berurah itself, if you want, this arichas is in Sifkaton Lamed Vav in the Mishnah Berurah.
So why would it help for the night and not for the morning?
Mm-hmm.
It's doing the night and the morning.
If what?
Why would it help for the night and not for the morning?
No, in a chanami, if you would have made the shechiyonu bachutz and then you'd be nichnas, I mean you invite to have legor mishas asi. In a chanami, if you hold that side, it would be the same. So this is the kushiyat sumo that the Baal Piskei Agra asks on the Masei Rav. Now in MS, the Masei Rav, if one is ma'ayin, is a mefurish tur. The chiddush of the goyim is really mavur in the tur. It's not poshet in the Torah, but when there's ma'ayin in the Torah, we'll see that the etzem din of the gra is a Torah. Let's go back. We mentioned 3 shittas rishonim to explain the difference between achila laila rishon and achila the rest of sukkahs. One of the 3 shittas is the Rosh, where the Rosh says, as mentioned before, that Tesvav says one's mechuyev to eat in the sukkah, even in the zman that geshamim are yered. That's shittas Rosh. The Torah, kamuvon, goes lefi shittas oviv harosh, and says that b'layla rishona one has to eat in the sukkah, even bisman that geshamim are yered. Now the Torah is mechadash an additional chiddush. It's mavur like that mitech harosh. That the shear one has to be oichel. How much does one have to be oichel in the sukkah? B'shas yered the geshamim. Zot the Torah kezayis. It's learned from tesvav. The same way as the chiyav of achilas matzah is a kezayis, achila b'sukkah layla rishona is a kezayis. So far, this seems to be entirely consistent with the Rosh. There's a chiyuv to eat in the sukkah, even by Esheyer de B'Shamim, and the din is like matzah, eat a kezayis. Good. Zok the Tur, what about the following shayla? I want to eat a kezayis pas b'layla rishona chutz la sukkah before I eat in the sukkah. Is that mutter or asa? So we'll say, why not? Yeshiva sukkah mitzad being mevatel yeshiva sukkah. What's the din? Only a kibetza. Only mechuyev to eat a kibetza in the sukkah. Elomai mitzad mechuyev to eat in the sukkah, even be'ez sheyer du geshomim that mechuyev to eat mitzad tesvav. You're right. So eventually I'll eat. At some point I'll go and eat. Why? Mm-hmm. So then we would have to say that by every Shabbos. Then we'd have to say that by every Shabbos in Yom Tov in the Sukkah, and it's not like that. You can eat the kazayis passed on Shabbos and Yom Tov outside. There is that is a noise in the Rishonim, but that's not the Rosh. There is such a noise in the Rishonim of the Shabbos and Yom Tov kavas, which we'll get to Be'ez Hashem when we learn that Sugya. That's not the noise of the Rosh. So the Torah says a very shver lashon. The Torah says, "Ve'afim yerdu geshomim lo yatzrenu ageshem." You mechuyev to eat in the Sukkah b'shas yud geshomim. Miu. Once you eat the kazayis in the sukkah of dogon, yoyotze. Zot the Rosh. Afagav the shir achila beloy sukkah hu kabetza. Shani leil rishon shu chayva tfei. Zok the Rosh, va'afilu loy boy lemeichal elo kazayis. Even if a person wants to eat only a kazayis, he's not ready to eat a full kibbutz of pas. Right now, he comes home, he wants to make motzi, he only wants a kazayis right now, so he shouldn't have a problem with bracha. But he wants now right to only eat a kazayis. Zok the Rosh, osala oichloi chutzala. Laila Rishona, it's also to eat it chutz sukkah. Therefore, says the Rosh, hilkach yoytze banami choy v'sukkah. Because a shir kazayis on Laila Rishona is choshuv, HaRav, you're not allowed to eat it chutz sukkah. So therefore, when you do eat it in the sukkah, that's choshuv and achila. That's why you're yoytze tezvav with the kazayis. As they state in Rosh. We'll get to the other way around in a moment. But the din of the tour, what state in tour? The tour says a din mefurish. Va'afilu loy boy lemeichal ela kazayis. Comes home, all he wants to eat is a kazayis. Osala ichle chutzala, you can't eat it outside the sukkah. Not mitzad achila koydem mitzvah, not mitzad because we want the first kazayis to be cheshev. Osir la ichle chutzala sukkah. Why? Because achila b'layla rishona, the shir is kazayis. It's in the rain. Osir la ichle chutzala sukkah. What state though? Why should I not be able to eat it? Hare mitzad achila chutz sukkah, it's a kibbutz, so the Rosh said. Mitzad my chiyuv to eat kazayis, like by Pesach, lo yochel kazayis matzah ba'achrona. I'll eat whatever I want in the house, and eventually I'll go eat a kazayis in the sukkah. Hopefully by then the rain will even have stopped. Why is that the Rosh? Is afilu leboy lemeichal kazayis osel lo'echel chutzala? Why? What should be the reason why I can't eat the kazayis outside the sukkah? Let's say it does. What's it good? But what's that mechayev me to do? What that mechayev me to do is go inside the sukkah and eat a kazayis. Fine, so I'll do that. But right now I want to eat a kazayis also chutz la sukkah. Any problem with that? No. Why can't I eat a kazayis chutz la sukkah? The shir achila chutz la sukkah doesn't change laila rishona pashtas. The shir remains. The shir achila chutz la sukkah is also loichel kibbutz beitza pas chutz la sukkah. What happens laila rishona? So I'm mechuyev to go eat in the sukkah. Tosfos says when it finishes raining, and the Rosh says right away. So if I don't decide not to do it right away, so maybe I was over on Zrizim Magdimim. Maybe it's mitzvah when I'm muvchar, I should do it right away. Maybe I shouldn't be oichel chaydim. Different zeitige reasons. But mitzad sukkah to say osar lo oichel chutz la sukkah, iboy lemeichal ela kazayis osar lo oichel chutz la sukkah. Why? What should that issa be? What's the shem of that issa? Shenemai. Sukkah's teishu shivas yomim, you're right. Sukkah's teishu shivas yomim is mechayev kibbutz of sukkah. Kazayis, nothing wrong. You're right. So I'll go into the sukkah eventually. I'll eat the kazayis. So I won't go now. So I was over on Zrizim. I was oichel koydem mitzvah. But the Torah is clearly saying loy boy lemeichal kazayis osel lo oichel chutzala. And he says, because it's also loichel chutzla, that is what that gives us the din, and that's the basis of the din, that a kazayis b'leil rishona is choshev and achila, and not a kibbutza, and I don't need a kibbutza. What steht da on Torah? Not moving what the Torah is saying. Pliat zuma. What's the isser being oichel kazayis chutzla sukkah? Now, l'chayra, what is mavur in the Torah is that Enochanami. Mitzad the mitzvah of achila in sukkah that says that any achila that I do has to be in a sukkah. And it's also to do that achila chutz la sukkah. Enochanami, I could eat a kazayis chutz la sukkah. But there's a meyucha de kedin b'layla rishona that I have to be koveya the sukkah with an achila as the mokum for diras kva. Correct. The yisoid that we established in last limud from the Ram. Mimele, if we would an achila of kezayis would be nase chutz la sukkah, then I'm not being keveya my mokum achila in the sukkah. I have a bias to be oichelim. So einochanami, I wasn't mevatel the mitzvah of sukkah's teishvu, because the shear for that achila is a kibeya. But what did I not do? I precluded the sukkah. I was mafkia that the sukkah should have a shem of a mokum for diras kva. That's what I did. Because you see, I have another place to be oichel. I can't be kavet later because by definition, if the zman of the Zayin Yomim started, and I was oichel somewhere else, then that means I'm being mishtamish in my bayis at the same time as being mishtamish in the sukkah. So what makes my sukkah my ikim akum kriyas? So what the Torah is therefore saying. Well, now the lashon oser we haven't defined yet. We've seen that in the Rambam last week. Also lashon oser, and we don't know if lashon oser just means because the mitzvah is mechayiv you to do it, or there's actually an issa. We'll come to that. But what the Torah is saying is that if you are moineya from the achila rishona in the sukkah b'layla rishona, then you have been mevatel the din of being kiveh the makam achila in the sukkah. And therefore, it's also lamecha kazayis chutz sukkah. That's what the Rosh is saying. Well, we'll get to a guest in a moment. We'll get to that need. This is the chiddush nifla that's mavur in the Torah. That ein chanami. What do we have in the Torah? Let's recount just the facts before there has been. Mitzad mitzvahs yeshiva sukkah. There's no din. The din is kebetza. The din of tezvov is mechadash hamechuyev to be oichel lekazayis teich hasukah. Zot the Torah, if you're oichel that kazayis chutz hasukah, you will mevatel a prat of mitzvahs yeshiva sukkah. What prat? The teretz is because the achila of Laila Rishona is what's going to be kiveya the sukkah as the makam dira. If that achila Rishona takes place chutz la sukkah, then in Chanami I was mevatel mitzvahs. I was mevatel the shem kviyus of sukkah. Now. Correct. Wait, so let's take it step by step. Lefishitas arosh, avada has a shem sukkah while it's raining. HaRav mechuyev to eat in the sukkah while it rains. I have a tour of mitzdayer the rest of the yom, but a shem sukkah it's a chefes. So that's the chiddush that we see in Tur. And then could be ma'ayin further to see if any of the Gedolei Achronim are ma'ora this kash on the Tur. I didn't find clearly that the Gedolei Achronim asked the shaila on the Tur, what should be the issa lechel chutz la sukkah b'layla rishona b'shir kezayis. Doesn't seem to be a clear issa, but this is the chiddush that we see in the Tur. Ba'oifen that we had finished, as we mentioned last week's limud, that there is a din in mitzvah sukkah to be keiveya, that the sukkah is ikim mokum dirasa. The Tzofnas Paneach said that what's keiveya that din? What's keiveya that din is an achila of kva. The Torah is saying that the din of a sukkah's teishvu says that how is it? What's the oifen that the Torah is mechayiv to establish the sukkah as the ikar mokum yeshiva for Zayin Yom? Teretz is the first achila b'tchilas shiva should be the achila that's kiveh Hashem sukkah. If the initial achila toich shiva takes place elsewhere, then I've said that I'm being mishtamish with my bias and being mishtamish with the sukkah. That's being megareya in the kviyus of sukkah. Ein chanami, it's possible that lu yitzuyur, I ate already chutz sukkah. I was over chas v'shalom on the tur, and I ate chutz sukkah. If I then eat kazayis in the sukkah, it's possible that would also be keiveya eventually, the sukkah. And we'll see about that Be'ezer Hashem Hemshech. But the ikar tzura of the kviyos, the ikar way that the Torah was mechayiv, of how the sukkah should be established as the makom dira for Shiva Yomim, that's the alidei, the achila of Laila Rishona should be teicha sukkah. So state in Tur. And therefore we have this chiddush, that iboy ochel kazayis, oser la'oichle chutzala. You can't eat the kazayis chutz sukkah. Laila Rishona somehow is mechayiv that an achila of kazayis also has to be teicha sukkah. What's mechayiv? Mitzat tezvov, all I have to do is like I have to eat the kazayis matzah, and I can be oichel ba'achroina, like it's mavur in the sugis himself, so I'll be oichel the kazayis ba'sukkah ba'achroina. Elamai, there's a bezundere din. Mitzad yeshiva sukkah, it's a kebeya. Mitzad the chiv tezvov, I can be oichel later, but I will have been megareya in establishing that the achila of zayin is b'kviyos teicha sukkah.
We're comfortable with the word ain last all versus us.
So the word also we're going to have to deal with, because the Rambam also says the word also, and the it's only a bittul mitzvah esek. And we'll see a broad machlokes achreinim between the Pri Megadim and between the Rebbe Eger and how to understand those lashonis of also that we find in the Rishon. But the Yesod Hadvarim is we have mavur in Tur. Is this Yesod?
It's not like
That's correct. That's not like the Mishnah Berurah. Ladina, I don't know. I didn't find that Mishnah Berurah the Bi'alacha noches to this thing in the Torah. That's what I'm saying. I'm being my dear to the Rabbim Adarabah, if I can find Maramakimus for this cash in the tour. I didn't see in the Gedei Achreinim that they're more in this problem. Mishnah Berurah and Bir Halacha certainly go with the Magen Avraham and the Bikuri Yaakov, that the cheshbon is a cheshbon of bracha, like we said before. But now we have akaponim a smach to this din. Now we'll get back to the Masei Rav in a moment. Let's first bring a smach from the Rishonim to this chiddush gadol that we've been establishing Be'ez Hashem in the last two limudim. That there's a din of a person having a sukkah kavua le'zayin yomim, and then an additional din that ma'asim which are classified as ma'asim dira have to take place in the sukkah. On the supplementary Maramakimus, there's copied a Ritz Geos. I apologize that because of the way the computer organizes the space, so the Ritz Geos became copied out of order. So we'll begin with Ois Aleph at the bottom of the Amud and proceed to Ois Beis, which is just above it. So bottom right of the Maramakimus column is a Dovar Nifla there's a Dovar Nifla in Ritz Geos. V'omar Rav Natrunoi Goin. It's from the Goinim. Most of the Torah of the Ritz Geos is the worm of the Goinim. Mitzvah sukkah la'asoisa kol echod ve'echod bebeisai. There's a mitzvah for every person to make a sukkah in his own home. V'lechoil v'lishtois v'lishan v'lodur v'lishanis ba, and to learn in it. Zok the Rav Natrunoi Goin ubebeis hakneses ein tzrichen lasos kein. There's no din that a shul needs to have a sukkah. There's no din that a shul has to have a sukkah. Why should we think that a shul should have a sukkah? Let's continue. He says, the city has wide streets, areas of public gathering. And you didn't come there on sukkahs to Prava. So there's a mitzvah to make a sukkah for all the people that gather there. So that they should be able to use a public sukkah to eat and to drink and to sleep there. Zok there ve'ein minig b'shtei yeshivas, and we didn't see that in the two yeshivas there was a minig to make a communal sukkah. Ve'ein oisim sukkah b'beis hakneses kol iker. They didn't make a sukkah in the Beis HaKnesses at all. It says v'zeh shemeviyim raya, those who bring a raya for the minig from a pasuk in Nehemiah, u'bechatzreis beis elokim ma'aseh. And they made sukkahs in the Chatzeris of Beis Elokim. They made in the sukkah in Chatzeris Yerushalayim. He says, "Ma'aseh zeh b'Yerushalayim hoya shoyu oilim laregel." They made sukkahs for the oiler regolim. Zok the Ritz Geos, aspam yonasis Yerushalayim. A city in Chutz La'aretz becomes like Yerushalayim sho'oilim la laregel. It's a din that to make trips on Cholamayid and come to these shvakim. So there's no din to make a sukkah b'chlaf. So Zodder Ritz Geos been nishal me Rav Hai. This question was asked to Rav Hai. Nagu lasei sukkah b'beis hakneses mishe ein loy mokem lasei sukkah oy mishe ein yodem aseges oy shaloi hoysa loy lasoisa nichnas v'yoyse bo v'yoytze b'yidei chevasoi u'mevarech eloi. Peladik Yeshaya. He says enochanami. The minig was to make in the beis hakneses either for someone who doesn't have a place to make a sukkah, or he can't afford it, or he didn't have wood, he didn't have the wherewithal to make the sukkah. So the Shayal asks Rav Hai going, when that person that doesn't have his own sukkah goes into the sukkah to eat, does he make a bracha or doesn't he make a bracha? So it was asked Rav Hai going, V'heishiv haloi ato yoidea shechayev adam leisha b'sukkah kol shiva ke'ein taduru. Is it called dira to use the sukkah of the Beis HaKnesses? Zok there, avada vaday nichnas v'yoshev ba mevorech. If he goes in to eat and to sleep, avada he has to make a bracha. Aval kol yedei choyva lo yotza. He wasn't yotze his mitzvah of basukas teishu shivas yom. Peladik Rav Hai, Zok there. Usha'ata yomer in maseges, I can't afford it. He has an eitzah. Zok there, ube Baghdad, oisim shpeo teknesha shalem sukkah zuchem minig Yisrael. Says everyone did it, And avada, you'll make a bracha when you go in, but you're not yetz mitzvah sukkah with that. So he says, mechuyev, you have to, because you can't be oicha v'yoshin chutz al sukkah. But mitzvah sukkah, you're not going to be yotze. He says it mefurish. Haloi ato yedeh shechayev adam leisha v'sukkah chushiva ke'ein tadur. Hayochalode bebeis haknesses v'lecha lishan shom. Vadai nichnas v'yoshin ba mevorech. Aval kol yedeh chayev alo yotze. So zokt the Rav Hai Goin, this chilek. That avada, we have to make a sukkah because we're choishish that if a person will be oichel v'yoshin chutz la sukkah, he's going to be vatal mitzvah sukkah, and he'll even make a bracha. But to say that that's going to be the person's whole sukkah yontif, he's not yet to that. He needs to have a sukkah in which he's dor, and a sukkah that belongs to the Beis HaKnesses is not his makom dir. The same way as up there with Haigain, if he slept and ate and he drank in shul, is the shul his house? Avada not. It's not his makam dira. So memele hu adin, he can't. The sukkah of the shul can't be his makam dira. He's going to be nichnas, and he has to be nichnas, and he's going to be mevarech avada because he can't be oichel b'yoshin b'sheisa chutz la sukkah. But to be mekayim ischiyav, he can't be mekayim ischiyav there. So ba'oifen we have a chiddush pele of the Ritz Geidas, b'shem Rav Hai Goin. This is so that b'mokum that someone doesn't establish a mokum dira kavua lezayin yom lo yotza yedei chayvasai. He has to be oichel and shaitan yashin, so maybe he's mechuyev to go into a sukkah because he can't be oichel chutz la sukkah, and he's going to even make a bracha on that. But he wasn't mekayim his mitzvah, but sukkah station shivas yom a mokum dira is kvai. He doesn't have. How does it fit? And that if all Yisrael that would be their sukkah and Echanami, then all of Klal Yisrael would be kaver that mokum because it would be all of Klal Yisrael's. But the mokum that it belongs to the Beis HaKnesses and Yen is just using the rishus of the Beis HaKnesses. The same as he can't be door in the Beis HaKnesses. He can't be he can't be door in the Beis HaKnesses. There won't be a fruta for each one. So that's a shayla if we can have if we need moment for shutfus. We'll get to that. To the mitzad the bailos. But mitzad the musag, that can I be mekayim my din dira b'sukkah shivas yomim al yedei being mishtamish in the makam dira of someone else, so I'm not his oirach. It's using public property. So within sukkah shula means I give you a schus in it, and therefore you can be kaver your makam dira with sukkah shechaver. Otherwise, leishamanu that you can't be an oirach b'kvius by someone else on yontif. That if someone else is giving you the rishus shtamshus as part of that dira and the chanami. But luyitzuya, there's a sukkah that stands for the Beis HaKnesses. If you're a member of the Kohol Mela, there's a shayla if a member of the Kohol has bailas. But someone oirach, like those who come in minachutz. So the din to make them a sukkah, it's not going to be their makam dira. So to be meinea them from the michshol of eating chutz sukkah. So that's in the goyinim whether or not the tzibur has an Indian to tell them to. But to say that because they come to a makam shvokim, therefore that's their makam dira, and therefore we have to that's the makam that they're going to have a sukkah in. No, Yerushalayim it's different. That's the makam for Kol Yisrael Vasukkahs. But stam someone visiting.
In the Rambam you said last week that there's one missing.
Correct. 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 That was in the Shiltus, not in the Rambam. The Shiltus brought two psukim. In the Rambam we didn't have them at first. So that's so das steht in Ritz Geidas that he's going to be yotze the din of the right. But the nekudas advarim is that the ikad din to have a mokum kva of dira for shivas yomim he's not mekayim. So
somebody eats by his friend. So he makes a bracha of his patient. Then he goes home and he goes to his own sukkah and eats. So then he has to make another bracha of the
So now if that now we have the shayla of the sugya of yotzei sukkah l'sukkah. Leila Rishon, I'm a guest by someone else, but I have my own sukkah. How am I going to be kaver that sukkah as being dira? And then chanami, what will be kaver that mokum for his dira's kva, because effectively he's switching the kainas, is going to be the achilas kva that is going to make be'emtzah sukkahs.
Before he didn't have kva, so now
well, he may have had kva. We can look at it as though since I'm part of this mishpacha and this is my mokum achila, so therefore this is my mokum kva for the part of sukkahs, right? We can be yotzei sukkah l'sukkah. Doesn't have to be only one sukkah that's kva, but at every point in sukkahs you have to have a place that is your mokum is the mokum kva. So in Echanami, that
Would you make a shachianu?
you're making shachianu on Tzakiyah mitzvah. You're making shachianu on Tzakiyah mitzvah. Because of being Mekai in the second din, so we don't know Chazal whatever Mekai b'shechianu for that. So this Chiddush Otzum, which emerges from the Klal Shittas Rishonim, that there's a din to have and that one can be yotze one without the other, we found out Makar Mefurish and Ritzkeis. He'll be Mekayim a din that he wasn't mevatel mitzvah sukkah. He has to be eicha b'sheish chutz sukkah. He wasn't Mekayim the mitzvah of Shivas Yom. Basukkah station Shivas Yom. So
therefore, is that you found a person's action should be kaveh the Allah to negative the Allah. What's a parallel to that?
We'll take that. Let's take it step by step. First, what state in Rishay? Im keinim hadvarim. So we now have a Pesach for the Gra. What state in Gra? In Gra state, the same din as the Tur. You cannot be oichel chutz lasukah leil rishona until you're oichel basukah. We have now the sheet of the Tur is because the etzem mitzvah of basukah's teishu shivishom is mechayev. That the achilas kva done, the first achilas kva, the initial achilas kva in the shiva yomim has to be done basukah kedei, that one shouldn't be mishtamish bebeisai, and that kiveh, that the sukkah is the makam of kviyos of dia. Now, on that you asked a kushya atzuma. Bishloima in the Tur, who's going b'shita sarosh, shasak shomim is a sukkah. Mechuyev to eat in the sukkah b'shasak shomim. But the Tur goes l'shita satoisves that b'shasak shomim there's no din to be eichel b'sukkah. And the Goin explains because b'shas yisak shomim. What was the lashon of the Gra HaRav? A sharf lashon. What did the Goin say? The oz ein shem sukkah olav. So therefore, how could I have a mitzvah possibly that's going to be mechayev me to be kaveh my makom dira in a sukkah if it doesn't have a shem sukkah right now? So in the Tur we have a mahalach, but what are we going to say in the Goin? The answer is in a chanami. True, it doesn't have a shem sukkah now, and I'm not mechuyev to be dor in the sukkah. But if I make an achilas kva chutz la sukkah, that means in the shivas yom I was mishamish two makaymes. So therefore I have to wait. That's a chiddush of stating guy. So it's takeshita satoisus. Frek the mara sloi motzinu kein b'shum paisek. Teretz is state in Tur. The Goin just said the same svar of a state in Tur. That there's a din that betchilas shivas yomim, no other maisa of diras kva can take place outside the sukkah. So that the sukkah betchilas shiva is kavua as the makam dira. In Goin state, there's al b'yasayid. Just the chiddush is, like was so correctly pointed out, that even though right now it doesn't have a shem sukkah, still will have to be mamten. Mitzvah deraisa state. That's the din. That's chalon. This is the chiddush nifla which you want to be matzia be'ezer Hashem in the shita of the Gra. Now we'll just touch on this briefly, as mentioned, that it would then come out. Two dinim. Firstly, what we are establishing up here, it's gayas, that if someone doesn't have a sukkah, a mokum kavua, they're somehow chaser in the kiyum. And second, which is what was mentioned before, is that luyitzuya, for whatever reason, b'layla rishona, it came out, I never was eichel b'sukkah, which is not so right, because according to the graph, it rained all night. I'll take eat the bayis. If you realize there's no time anymore before Allah is a shachar, we'll take eat in the bayis. It comes out that then the first ma'isa achila that I'll be makayim in the sukkah will be the keveh. So I should have it in to immediately enter into the sukkah, not be eichel anything chutz sukkah the next morning. On both these points, Rabbi Gedalia Nadal, the Talmud of the Chazon Ish, in the third chelik of Chiddush Rabbi Gedalia, he's nochis to both these svaras, and in both of them he says, "V'zu lo shamanu mi'olam." Come, so, if you look on the left-hand side, very bottom of the time doesn't allow us to go through all the Dvarim Neflaim of Rabbi Gedalia, but just take out the Tamtzis. At the very bottom of the column, it says, "L'fize yischadesh lanu halacha chadasha." The imkara oynes shal yoshav b'sukkah b'tchilas hachag. If an oynes happened and he didn't sit in the sukkah at the beginning of Chag, very common oynes in Chutz La'aretz, it rained all night. Harehu mechuyev leishav b'sukkah miyad k'sheyeh b'yadai. You should go and be kaver right away. ואפילו ביום ג' או ד' של חג הסוכות, כדי שמעכשיו יחושב כפיית דירוסה בסוכה. ודין זה לא שמענו מעולם. If it rained all night, the next day, are we in a rush to eat in the sukkah? No, we travel like a regular yontif. Yeah. So this is the chiddush of Zula Shemanu Miyochel. Later, on the right hand side, in Oischof Beis, Rabbi Gedalia then challenges the Ikki chiddush that the last 2 weeks limud was based on. He says, what exactly? He says, Yesh la'ayin b'das chachom b'gavna de'ein le sukkah klal ve'einu yodeh be'ez sukkah yoichal eich nikva dirasa v'sukkah. Person is a guest in the city. What's going to make his diras kva? What's the mechanism by which he's going to be mekayim?
Who says somebody else's sukkah can't be your kva?
He says, "Ubishloim miyad below rishon ochal basukah." See the lashon of the shaynas. Imkein afshe achakach lo yichlet be'ezeh sukkah hu yoichal. Mikomokom kakova dirose basukah. V'kol zman shaloi okar akviyos le'echal babayis yesh hemshich lekviyusa. Goes back to your shayla. Gabonim dalton binich later, so I changed my mind.
There's svara that just if somebody goes to somebody's house, he gives you matzah, so if I find safety count, he's like matzah.
He's macking it to you, yes. Okay. Very possibly, yeah. But I'm not sure if you need that.
You don't need that. Why can't it be your sukkah? Your kviyas.
I'm not sure if you need that. That's my kviyas is to be door over here as long as it's patented for me to be door here. No, I don't have to have
You don't have to be yours.
It has to be like the lashon of the Ritz Gayus is that I'm not on public property. I'm not in the shul. I'm not sleeping on the bench in the base medrash, right? Oh, but he allows me rishos.
You're allowed to. That's the process.
You
don't have to make it.
I don't know if you need kinyan necessarily, but let's see. Rabbi Gedalia will touch on this. He says, "The kolzman shel okar kviz aval imloy ocha beleil rishon besukkah." Let's say it was yardu gushamim. V'loy hichlit bedaita be'ezeh sukkah yoichal b'chag in kem b'mak choves hatzmim basukkah. V'afilim gomar v'hichlit bedaita be'ezeh sukkah yoichal. Then he decides, I'm going to spend yontif over here. Just thinking that I'm is not necessarily going to be enough. But livnei sukkah, oilasis kinyan, like was suggested before, uliyachet sukkah lifnei achag, vezuloi shamanu miyad. So for that, we be'ezer Hashem are showing a Ritz Gayus. That the Ritz Gayus says klar. That if someone's sukkah is using only a communal sukkah on Yontif, l'chayr is not being kaveh makom dira in that sukkah. So he was avada mekayim that he wasn't being oichel b'sheisa chutz sukkah, and he was mekayim dira a ma'isa dira b'sukkah. But the din that he has to have a welcome kavua for dira shivas yomim he doesn't have. Dvarim mufurashim in the goinim. So akaponim they could be mekayim ma'isa dira, but that chelik of the sukkah they weren't mekayim. They were honest from that. One of the three cases.
It's such a chiddush.
So, but Rabbi Isai, we have a makar for this, a makar nema in Ritz Gayus, where the lashon of the Ritz Gayus b'shem Rav Hai is mufurish that mishtamish b'sukkah shel beis haKnesset. That is mechuyev to be oichel. He's mechuyev to be yoshen and he'll be mevarech, but b'sukkah station shivas yom he wasn't mekayim because he doesn't have a makom kva for dira. And we're saying that's perhaps the shita of the tour. That's mechayiv that the chila b'layla rishona has to be immediately basukkah, and it's also lechol kazayis chutz sukkah, and that's mechayiv or state in gro that one has to be mamtin because as soon as an achilas kva takes place chutz sukkah, we will megareya in the kviyas of the sukkah l'zayim. That chiddush that Rabbi Gedalia says zuloi shomanu has a makar nemon in Ritz Gayus. According
to this case, even in the base of Mikdash, that yaitze.
No, so that he's saying aliyah l'regel is chaluk. Aliyah l'regel is makom for kol Yisrael. He says
aliyah Baghdad, a fill by Mikdash. He says.
No, he says. He says. He says. B'zeshem avim rayu b'chatzes beis alikim ma'ases b'Yushalayim ho'yishoyel l'regel. Aspam yanasas Yerushalayim. There's a lotion of the Tshuvas HaGoinim. If you want to finish with this, in the Madur of the Yitzchak Kiranin, that's the Hagois on the Ritz Gayus that were written by Rabbi Yitzchak Dov Halevi Bamberger, the Abbezin of Würzburg. Goinish Chibur, which is not so well known. He has Hagois on the Ritz Gayus called Yitzchak Kiranin. He brings a nusach of the Tshuvas HaGoinim in Shari Tshuva. It's a sefer called Shari Tshuva, Tshuvas HaGoinim, where he says that Kein chazina deloy mechayvo Yisrael lemevat sukkah ela bebeisei bedirose hecha de ochel beshosi vegone tmuras dirose shel kol hashana kula. Aber bebote knesis bebote midrashos ein miyuchodim ela liyeshiva v'tefila v'torah. There's no reason why I have to have a sukkah there, so that I have a sukkah for the basic Knesset functions. It's in exchange for my house. Zok der avalim oisim b'shel oivei drochim yofehem oisim. Avol, he says, b'nei ha'ir lismoich al sukkah shel beis hakneses lotzeis bo yedei chayvosam ein yoitzim elo b'sukkah shel kol echad ve'echad bebeisoi. Can we get a clearer lashon than that, Rabbi Yisrael and the Goinim? I have a cheshbon, I have a sukkah in my house, but I want to eat tonight in the shul sukkah. It's good, man. I want to. Zok the Chuvas HaGoinim, that's not the sukkah, that's Tmuras Beisai. That's a sukkah for Oivei Drochim, that's not your Mokum Dira. How could that be your Mokum Dira? Mela, someone who's in the Beis HaKnesses, who has to be Oichal and Sheis and Yoshin, he has no choice, he has to be Mekayim Iba Sukkah. But for you who have a sukkah bebeisa, you can't use the sukkah in the Beis HaKnesses. Because the Kol Echal of Fikoch Shoisim Sukkah bebeis HaKnesses, Zok they're different of how you going. Ain't tzorich levarech alei shaloy la'atzma oisim el lo ivrei drochim.
No, but it's my that if you don't have, then that's your kriyas, right?
No, he doesn't say that's your kriyas. If you don't have, he says, you won't be mekai in the midst of a tukar sheisu shivas yomim.
Why can't you be kadei?
Because it belongs to the Beis HaKnesses. It's not yours. All you can do is use it in order not to be oichel b'yoshin.
But agast, why is it worse than this kasha? Why is it worse than a gast in somebody's house?
So the nukuda in a gast is because that the is my mokum dira. That's what Gedalia says.
You can't have a bailus in a shul.
That's the right now. Yeah. And we have a parallel to that in the Chus Eruvin, right? How do we put the mats in the Beis HaKnesses? So the Rishonim say because the Gabe has a dira there, but the Orchim v'Shavim are Aroyim. They don't make dira. That's a halacha in the Chus Eruv Chatzeres. And it's Shtufim Mevayis.
Later, Moshe in the sukkah, Kamino sukkah. He wasn't yet to the sukkah.
Why do you make the brachos if you're not Mekayim stage? What's the bracha?
Because you'll be Mekayim Akaponim. That chelik of the mitzvah of not being Oicha b'Sheis Chutz HaSukkah.
We have to have a drush. So. Let's pick up the question. We have to have a
Be'ez
drush.
Hashem will be mentioned. And we'll see, Rabbi Yisrael Be'ez Hashem, that this will be the Pesach to the difficult L'Shein Rishonim, which we'll see in the next week's Limud, where the Gemara discusses, could you be Yotzei Misukkah L'Sukkah be'emes in the middle of Sukkahs? And even in the Gemara, what's the shame? The whole Mechayiv is just to be Oicha b'Sheis HaSukkah. What's the difference in this Sukkah and that Sukkah? We'll see L'Shein Rishonim again, which will clearly be mashma. That in Yotzei Chutz HaSukkah is this nekuda of changing the Mokum Kiyas.
What is he Mekayim though? He's not Mekayim stage. What is he Mekayim?
Akopayim, it's a Ma'aseh Dira, like we saw last week in the Rambam. There's clearly two different. There's a Ma'aseh Dira. Basukah's Teishu means I have two chiyuvim. I have to have a mokum kavua to be different than my bayis, and I have to be dor basukah in anything that's a Ma'aseh Dira. So the Ma'aseh Dira I'm doing basukah, but I wasn't Mekayim. That this is my mokum kavua. That's two. Exactly like we established in last week's limud. In the Shiltus we had two psukim, but not all Rishayim we still have those two psukim. In the Ran that was pointed out before, the Ran says it without the two psukim. The Ran says it's all nichla and basukah's Teishu. So these are the Shonis Nifloim that we find in Ritzgeis. The one with full Russian and the going into this side. Let's just finish briefly with Divrei Haggadah. We know Orach Chaim HaKadosh brings that the Milchama that we're referring to, and as I state in Arizal, it's Geboit on Zohar HaKadosh, is speaking about Milchemes HaYetzer. In the lashon of the Chovos HaLevavos, Sharo Anoshim Shechazru Min HaMilchama v'Omer Lehem Chased Echad Atem Chayzum HaMilchama HaKetana. V'achshav you have to be loich in the Milchama Gedola. Omer Lo Izu Milchama Gedola Zu Milchemes HaYetzer HaRav Chai Loisa. It's very fascinating that in Sifsei Koyin, from the Reb Shapsis in Galileo, the Talmud of the Arizal, in the beginning of this week's parasha, he says he has the Kabbalah that the Milchama was Alexander Mokdoin. And the person who said it to him was, like Gemara says in Yuma, who went to see Alexander? He said it to him. That exchange of the Chassid Echad who said Atem Chazatem Milchama Tana was said to Alexander Mokdoin. I don't know another makar for this Kabbalah, but I state Chovos HaLevavos is Maaseh. The Kabbalah happened with Davar Nifla. So therefore, we understand that the descriptions of the Torah when describing Milchama, the Seder of Milchama, Dinei Milchama, are referring to the Milchama Ketana, and there are roimes to the Milchama Gedol Milchemes HaYetzer. In Parsha Shoftim state that the Seder of the Yitzil Milchama is Kol HaYorev Achaleivov Yelech V'Yashav L'Beisei. Machlokes in the Mishnah in Soita, we're familiar with from Rashi and the Ramban, Machlokes Rebbe Kiva and Al Panoim, if the Yorev Rachalevov is literally Yorev Rachalevov, or it means Mi'avera Shabiyad. Yorev Rachalevov means Mi'avera Shabiyad. The Panim Yofas asks a Pashta Kasha. Says the Gemara says, Avera Shabiyad means even for an Issa de Rabbanon, Soch ben Ishtabach liyoytze, steht in the Gemara. Soch ben Tefillah l'Tefillah. So Frek the Hafla in Panim Yofas, he says, the Gemara says in Zvachim that every person can bring an oilam. Gemara says in Daf Zayin. Why? Because there's no Adam Yisrael that wasn't a Vatla Mitzvah. One of the things one brings an oilam for is a Bittul Mitzvah. In the Adam Yisrael, a Bittul Mitzvah. So check the Panim Yofas. How is everyone ever Yetzel Melchama? How did it work? There's no Adam Yisrael. So I'm sure the oilam is familiar with the Maskilims playing brisk. And Chanami, only the Shakasari and the Gra went. And Chaim said the curtain came down too early because that's taka how it happened. Just they won. But the Pashta Shadvarim is we see throughout Novi that the Melchemes Mitzvah wasn't like that. V'oyed fekta hafla. Rashi says at the beginning of the parasha of Yitzias Milchama, Shema Yisrael atem krevim. Zot Rashi afilu ein lav biyodchem elos chus krishma. Ein lechem elos biyod chus krishma. It's one mitzvah's essay. What about all the other chesroinus chas v'shalom? What does it mean ein lechem elos chus krishma? That would be moil. Stir minei. These are the two shilas that the Panim Yofas asks. So mikoyach these kashas of Panim Yofas is mechadash yisayid. He says enchanami. How did Milchama work? Because be'etzim every Adam Yisrael avada. The Gemara says in Zvachim, miyom ezikisis libi. There's always bittul mitzvah. Zokt the Panim Yofas, but for that we have the yisayid of the achreinim that a hero tshuva is enough. The Chaschinuch brings, we're familiar with in Parshas Nosai, Harei mekudeshes li amanash ani tzadi gomer. Harei ze mekudeshes shema hira tshuva b'liboy. There was no charota, no aziva, no kabbalah, no vidui. Hira tshuva makes a person ois rosha. Zot the Panim Yofas is kedei not to be nitfas in the avera shebiyodoi, one has to have been mahara b'tshuva. That's all. That's a chiddush of the Panim Yofas. One has to have been mahara b'tshuva. The same way as in the Seder Aget of the Maharam and Shulchan Aruch, it says that before the Eidim are made on a get, on a Mesiras Aget, we tell the Eidim to be Mahar B'tshuva so they shouldn't have a Shem Rosha. Factor B'chonon, if they take a Arishayim, is that from Klapan Al Chet? They have to say Vidu, they have to go through Seder Atshuva. No, to be Mafkia Shem Rosha, here Tshuva is enough. Every Masadi Gittin, Eidim Zayt Mahar B'tshuva. What did that do? That is mafkir from Shem Rosha. Zot the Panim Yofas, the same thing is true in Yitzias Milchama. The hero tshuva is mafkir from Chet Shabiyad. Zot the Panim Yofas is what's the only aver which chas v'shalom cannot be niskaper al yedei hero tshuva. That chas v'shalom a person has to be mace in order for him to have kapara is chil Hashem. Afilu ein lohem elo mitzvah zu shel krishma. If they were never chas v'shalom over on yichud Hashem. They were never chas v'shalom mekalkel emunosom. There was never minus. They could be yotzel macham they hear a tshuva. Zot the Panim Yofas was mean ish hayori v'rachalevov. Zot the Panim Yofas avadi he's yori ma'avera shebiyodoi, but he's a rachalevov that he's not ready to be oizev chet. The hear a tshuva felt him. Mi hoish hayori v'rachalevov means avadi he's a yori. Every person is yori from the chet shebiyodoi. But he's a rachalevo because he doesn't have the oimetz alev that I'm ready to make an emissary hero tshuva and to be oiziv. The ish hayori v'rachalevo, he has to be shov machmas avera shebiyadeh. So Zod the Panim Yofas is avada kol echad Yisrael goes l'milchama. How? Because he's mahara tshuva be'emes. The ish hayori v'rachalevo means he's yori avera shebiyadeh because it's chosa that hero to be oiziv. During the flowing of the Panim Yofas. On Milchama. Remele ki seitze la Milchama alo yivecha zot the Panim Yofas. The avoid of the Yimei ha'elu. Elu Yimei elu. As if this is Mavur and Zera HaKadosh. Zot the Panim Yofas, we could imagine that kedei to be able to be oisek in the avodas hayoim, the dargas of tshuva that we're going to have to reach might be beyond the same Adam Yisrael shel bittul mitzvah. All one has to just be at the Panim Yofas is akopana to mafkia oneself from yori v'rachalevo. Avada were all Yereim, but the shaila is the other chelik of the leiv that can be an amitz to be able to be mahar tshuva b'li by that tshuva. that will be mafkia us from our kaponim having a shenachis and chet. That's what's nidrash from the person. That's the din of Yor. That's the din of Yor. He says to the Yoriv was the Yoriv from the Avera from the Avera Shaviyot. So the Ponim Yofas, that's the mafteach to these Yom of Milchama, and that's what's nidrash from the person.
Murdik. But Torah is the